You've heard about the Blue Lagoon, you've heard about Reykjavik, you've heard about all these wonderful Icelandic waterfalls, but what is there outside of those main areas? I wanted to find out. It's always good to get some sustenance in before you start a big adventure, so I made sure to park in front of a beautiful mountain, snow-capped, so that I can eat an avocado toast, which is pretty much the only food I could find in Iceland besides fish. If you do decide to do the ring road, which is the entirety of Iceland pretty much, you will find yourself in Akureyri, which happens to smell like sulfur, including the water, which means if you shower, you get to smell like sulfur too, which is eggs. Iceland's weather and terrain changes about every 5 minutes. So 1 second you're on the side of the road looking at a beautiful snow-capped mountain, and then the next minute you're in that snow-capped mountain looking at all the snow. Sadly, the West Fjords aren't part of the ring road directly, so they had to be skipped on this trip. The West Fjords include things like foxes, they have something called a pink sand beach, but it looks more gold to me, and then also a waterfall, the Dinyandi waterfall, which translates to... Next question. As I passed the West Fjords, I got a notice from the car company I was renting from that there was a hurricane a-brewin'. I was so thankful that I was in the west at this point because it said the hurricane was mostly set to hit in the east. And the entire week before this trip, I was reading news stories about how tourists got stranded and had to be rescued from the East Fjords. And I was worried that I would have to be one of those tourists rescued from the East Fjords, but luckily I was not. And I took this as a chance to make a game plan for the day the hurricane was about to happen, that I would just stay inside that day. And for anyone who watched that wild video that I made about me experiencing a snowstorm, which was very dumb of me, by the way, that was not the hurricane. The hurricane is much worse than that. So don't take Icelandic weather lightly. The calm before the storm was the sun out bright for the first time my entire trip in Iceland. After a pretty mid 4-hour drive, I finally saw a tour bus, so immediately pulled over to check it out. Pulled over, looking at these cute little craters, mossy fields. Along the drive, there was a rock and a farm. However, it would have taken me more time to drive to those places than I would have actually spent at those places, so I skipped them.
You definitely need a fitness level of like 10 or 11 to do this one.
You could probably see the parking lot with my little red car down at the bottom. And we have came up all of these stairs somehow. So I've just arrived in this iconic kind of town in the west of Iceland. And it smells like sewage. I hope the water doesn't smell like sewage because the water in the last place I was at smelled like eggs. And this water, like this air, smells much worse. I decided to walk around the town to see what it's like in a fishing village, as well as because I hadn't really done much that day. There wasn't really any nightlife. The only people that were out were the fishers. When I was done exploring, I went back to the place that I was staying at. Good morning. I just woke up. I have to start the day because I planned too much for today. And I would like to do it. I would like to do the things I planned. And I also have 2 things from yesterday that I planned. So let's get up. Let's go start the day. I always feel slightly better when there's 2 gas stations in a town, because then there's a slight chance that in case the first one doesn't work for my card, that the second one might, which does happen depending on the brand of gas. Good luck. So we've just arrived at this wonderful waterfall, very similar to all the other wonderful waterfalls. Except this one is next to a farmhouse, an abandoned farmhouse in the middle of nowhere. And lucky for me, this farmhouse has a tractor right next to the walkway. Alright, so our pants and our jackets have officially become wet, and I'm still dry. So 10 out of 10, would recommend rain clothes. There were horses, people watching as I went to the next spot. And if you don't like lighthouses for whatever reason, just do it for this drive. This drive was so beautiful, especially with the morning sunrise. So you probably can't see it. Actually, you can kind of see it. The lighthouse that we're going to is in the distance, and you can kind of see it. So, yay, almost the lighthouse. I think this is my first lighthouse in Iceland that I'm actually going to. Look at how stunning she is. Slay. So we are here at the lighthouse. I got here around 7 or 7:30 a.m. in the fall. There isn't anyone here right now, which is why I'm able to do this. I have my car set up right here, right in front of the walkway, because the wind is insane. Unfortunately, most of my pictures of literally anything in Iceland don't look like the pictures online, and this was the one thing that I thought kind of, maybe, sort of, with the sunlight in the background, might look more similar to the pictures online, but everything else... Oh, I guess while we're here, I'll show you the setup. I have it weighted down with my camera bag, and then my tripod, and then I have my car. In the same area as the lighthouse, but a little bit earlier on the drive, there's a white sand beach, and Iceland is mostly known for their black sand beaches, so it's interesting to go to one of their white sand beaches. There was a rainbow gently laying over the crystal blue water. I should probably also note that I wasn't able to get any coffee this morning, as I couldn't find any place that was open at 6:30 a.m. in the town. Coffee at the crater. I know they're not gonna have coffee at the crater, but like... Arriving to the crater, there was another rainbow, and this one you could see the entire thing from edge to edge. I've never sought out the end or the edge of a rainbow. However, I feel like here in Iceland, where there are so many rainbows everywhere you look, that it has to be possible to find the end of a rainbow. You can see a couple other craters from the top of this crater. Then it was time to take the many steps back down to the parking lot. Believe it or not, a peninsula has a lot of beaches, so I went to another beach. Unfortunately, beaches in Iceland are too cold to like wear any swimwear or go in the water, so you are fully clothed in your winter gear when you go to these beaches. There were lots of little swamps of water, and I was curious what lived in them, given that these looked like very habitable locations, at least for the moss and algae. I felt like the waves at this beach were a little bit ready to fight the tourists. They showed very far away, and then when they crashed, they got close, and you thought, hey, it's almost done, and then they come closer, and then comes closer, and all of a sudden you're running away from a wave. I took in the views one last time before heading back to my car. Honestly, Iceland is super lonely, and these magical views or these magical points are pretty much the only thing that make it worth it. This is a sign for crampons, which means that you need crampons, which means that you need to attempt to get crampons through TSA, or rent them in Iceland. Most of the things today are around the same loop, so you aren't really going out of your way to go see something, it's just on the path. This viewpoint looks exactly like the pictures online, and there are a lot of people, but it's nice to just get out and stretch your legs for a minute. So this is the car park right now. There are a couple of spots available, but it's mostly full. The next stop on this tour is the Arnarstapi Cliffs. It's about a 10-minute drive, but it's absolutely worth it. We are at the Arnarstapi Cliffs, and it's a little bit wet outside right now. You can see my hood is a bit wet, and it's completely empty. Isn't that great? Imagine like just what a little bit of rain does. It gets rid of everyone. One of the first viewpoints I saw was this giant cave that it seemed like there was no way to get to, but I wanted to get to it so bad. It looked so cool. Arnarstapi Cliffs equals core memory. Look at the hole in that thing. I said that I would spend about an hour here, but ended up spending like 2 or 3. Not only were there so many amazing views at this point, but there is literally a photo opportunity. Unfortunately, the rain subsided a bit and people started to come out of their car and it got really busy really fast. You can either ask someone to take the picture for you or video for you, or you can set up your tripod in this very like slippery, rocky area. So I opted for the tripod. So I'm going to this food truck called Vista. We have arrived to the gorge. And it's packed. There isn't really a lot of parking spots. Everywhere you go in Iceland, you see like aesthetically like placed rocks. Like even on the sides of the highways, you'll see them. And I don't know what they're for. So we are approaching the gorge. Still don't super know what it is, but it's big. The gorge was super slippery, and if you go deeper into the gorge, it gets mildly dangerous, especially if you're the only one going in there. I definitely don't think it's for kids, and I would probably make sure that you are very like coordinated and have the proper equipment if you are going into it. I was able to bring my camera equipment to this first portion. However, when I tried to go up into the deeper portions of the cave, I wasn't able to bring my camera equipment because there was so much water, as well as it was very slippery, and I just wanted to have as little on me as possible. The gorge is so beautiful inside. However, I turned around pretty quickly after starting to go deeper because it was getting super dark, super wet, super slippery. I just didn't really feel safe, especially because there's only one way in and one way out. So if you fall, you get hurt. If anything happens, you're stuck there and you have to be rescued somehow. So this is the next waterfall. I really feel like she can be better appreciated from a distance. You know, we've seen a lot of waterfalls. After admiring Bjarnarfoss, I traveled to the next location. So we just arrived at the Seal Beach. Every tour bus in Iceland is here today. Right now they're just sort of playing in the water. You can see it with its little flippers. I saw about 5 seals. They were all just kind of swimming around in the ocean. None of them really came onto the land at all. I think that earlier in the day maybe they come to like sunbathe. I don't know how seals work, but there were tons of sea lice or sea ticks, like tons of them. Like every time I looked at the ground there was more of them. I have no clue how there were so many, but before I get in my car I will be checking all of my clothes and taking off my million layers to make sure that I'm not tracking them with me, because I do not want to deal with that later. Would rather just deal with it now. There were a couple on there, got rid of them. I have a little bit of sunlight left, so I'm gonna try to make it to the other mountain I want to see today. The drive to the mountain was about 40 minutes, and I wasn't sure if I was gonna get there before the sun went down. This was one of those things from yesterday that I hadn't done yet but really wanted to do today. Luckily, it was twilight when I got there, so there was still a tiny bit of sun left. I'm pretty sure that this is the iconic mountain. And then, for some reason, we're hiking away from it. We are going to the tourist spot. This is the mountain from the Game of Thrones series known as the Arrowhead Mountain. Its amazing shape was formed when the glaciers melted back millions of years ago. Its Icelandic name translates to Church Mountain, given the shape of it. This was one of the most popular spots of the day. There were so many people there, everyone trying to get a good shot, good picture, good angles. So if you go down a little bit, there is a second waterfall. It was night now and cloudy, so no chance of the northern lights, so I headed back to the place I was staying. Another iconic spot without a bathroom. Time to give Kirkjafoss my money. 700 Icelandic to visit for an hour. I passed it again in the morning when I was leaving the peninsula. There were a handful of other waterfalls to see in the west, however they were all really out of the way by about an hour or two. So I passed on those and made my way down to Reykjavik to tag up on things that I missed in the first part of my trip. The landscapes and mountains were so beautiful on the way down that any time I saw a car park, I pulled off to just stop and enjoy it while I was there.